Cypress Development Corp. is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp. trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin, publisher of TheBreaker.News. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Thank you.
The younger Trudeau, Justin, making history probably for what he feels is all the wrong reasons. He has become the first Canadian Prime Minister to be found guilty of not once but twice of breaking ethics, regulations, and rules. What's your point of view on the SNC-Lavalin scandal?
Well, Justin Trudeau has doubled down, and he still says it's all about protecting Canadian jobs. No apologies. He even said so. That he's not going to apologize for protecting Canadian jobs. The only job that I think he really is trying to protect, and the one job that he really cares about, his job and the jobs of the people around him at the Liberal caucus. That's really what this is all about. He's been caught doing something which he shouldn't have been doing, which is protecting the interest of a very large company, SNC-Lavalin, a very large company which really was a black mark on the brand of Canada worldwide for its corruption and bribery in various countries. And the case that's going to go forward in Quebec, the criminal case, is about corruption and bribery that happened in Libya from 2001 and 2011. It didn't just happen in Libya, it was really Libyan-based, but the corruption also happened in Canada, where SNC-Lavalin paid to wine and dine one of dictator Muammar Gaddafi's sons. So SNC-Lavalin, once the government changed in 2015, went to work to lobby the Liberals to change the law so that there could be what does exist in some other countries, a remediation regime where a company can say, oh yeah, we did wrong, we did the bad things, we fired some people, we're going to do better next time, we'll pay a big fine, and we'll agree to various conditions, just don't put us through the courts. That's what SNC-Lavalin lobbied for, and eventually the Liberal government did make a law to allow this new remediation regime happen, this kind of no-fault plea bargain in some ways. But when it came to the prosecution service to look at these charges, it decided that the proper course would be to let it go through the courts, to let there be a prosecution and let a judge and jury decide the fate of SNC-Lavalin. And last summer, suddenly the Liberals got worried because there was a provincial election coming in Quebec, and of course the federal election on its way nationally. And Trudeau was concerned about what he thought would be job losses at SNC-Lavalin in Montreal, impacts on suppliers, clients, shareholders, pensioners. SNC-Lavalin has taken a lot of money to do a lot of public works projects in Canada. It's also a company that has been found to have made a lot of political donations, and very powerful people involved in SNC-Lavalin who are also Liberal supporters. So Trudeau and various people around him in his office, and also the office of Finance Minister Bill Morneau, mobilized and did whatever they could to try to change Jody Wilson-Raybauld's mind. Jody Wilson-Raybould, the Attorney General, was doing as the Attorney General should do, taking hands off and letting the Independent Prosecution Service do what it needs to do. But Trudeau and Morneau and others had a different idea. They thought that they could try to convince her to meddle in the prosecution service and say, hold on, let's try this remediation agreement. Jody Wilson-Raybould early on had told people, and funny enough, August 14th of 2018, her staff was telling people from the Ministry of Finance, do not interfere. That's not where you should be doing what you should be doing, and it's against the law and could get the government in a lot of trouble. Meanwhile, as Mario Dion, the ethics commissioner, found there were at least four times from August to December of last year in which there were people that were overstepping the bounds, interfering with Jody Wilson-Raybould's job in a conflict of interest directed by the Prime Minister to help find a private benefit or gain. And the private benefit or gain was to help SNC-Lavalin out of the corner, essentially. Very, very damaging that this report comes out today when a lot of pundits thought, well, SNC-Lavalin, that's kind of yesterday's news. It dominated, like no story has dominated for a long time. It dominated the news for the first quarter of 2019, and now here in the dog days of summer, with the federal election away, just 2 months away, suddenly the SNC-Lavalin story is fresh again, and Trudeau is looking bad, and Jody Wilson-Raybould is looking good.
Should the Prime Minister have just said, I'm sorry, I did wrong things, can we please move on from here? Because it looks like he's still trying to explain his way out of a problem that's unexplainable.
Well, I think today is the point of no return. Today was his chance, after denying, delaying, deferring, some people even say lying, and also smearing. Trudeau and others really smeared Jody Wilson-Raybould earlier this year. They did a lot of things wrong, and they didn't want to apologize then. This was their chance to apologize, to put this behind them and say, look, we're going to do things better, and we did wrong. Well, Trudeau kind of said that he's taking responsibility for this. Well, he can't really take responsibility for what he already has. He's the Prime Minister. He's already responsible, and that's the way it goes. So he can't take any more responsibility. He said that he disagreed with some of the Ethics Commissioner's findings, even though he was going to accept the report. Well, that's kind of damning with faint praise and sounding like a bit of a spoil sport. Well, this was his chance, and he didn't take that chance to say sorry and try to get ahead of the story, and because a lot has happened since then, especially with SNC-Lavalin. Their stock price has gone down to levels not seen in about a decade or more. It's a company that has changed its CEO and has some new executives involved. It's a company that has walked away from some bids. It's not bidding for the Broadway SkyTrain or the Patella Bridge anymore. It's walking away from some big business while it transitions and reorganizes. And it's transitioning and reorganizing because of all that's happened this year that has accelerated this and has put it into a position that it may have to do even more work to try to change its ways and slim itself down, especially if this criminal prosecution goes forward. So I think that what Trudeau has done may have actually done more bad for not only his government and his chances for re-election, but it may have actually also done bad for SNC-Lavalin, made it look even worse. This is what no government should be doing. The Trudeau supporters are out there saying, well, what about Harper? Harper was worse. Well, Harper, in the Harper administration, they got voted out and deservedly, because they're poor ethics too. There was the finding of contempt of Parliament. There were various scandals. But this is a different scandal where you got the Prime Minister for the second time being found in conflict of interest. The first time, of course, was the trip to the Aga Khan's island in the Bahamas. The Aga Khan was receiving substantial amounts of government funding and was also lobbying. And Trudeau should have known better to put whatever friendship aside while he's in a public office, because people around him would be deciding on perhaps more grants for the Aga Khan. It was wrong for him to do that, and the previous conflict of interest commissioner found that to be the case. Well, here we have an even more serious situation rearing its ugly head again, and this will give ammunition to Jagmeet Singh of the NDP and Andrew Scheer of the Conservatives, who both have already said their piece in reaction. Singh said that Trudeau's not fit to be Prime Minister, and Scheer went a little bit further, although Scheer is no longer calling for his resignation. He just wants to defeat him in the election this fall.
Is this the kind of ammunition the opposition parties were looking for after it seemed like SNC had died out?
Absolutely it is, because the Liberals tried many different tactics along the way. They tried to become the party of climate change, that only the Liberals could care about climate change, even though, of course, they're also the party that bought a pipeline. And by doing so, they ticked off a lot of people who were kind of soft Liberals, people from the green side of things. They didn't make them happy, and of course ticked off a lot of people from the conservative side of the spectrum who aren't happy that the government is using taxpayer dollars to buy a pipeline when there was a private company, Kinder Morgan, that was wanting to put this forward. So there's been that paradox where Trudeau has been trying to say for the last 4 years that you can have the environment, you can have the economy. Well, it just seems to be a bit of a slogan, because a lot of people don't believe him one way or another, don't think he's properly managing the environment, and don't think he's properly managing the economy, especially when he promised to balance the budget in 2019, and lo and behold, he comes with a budget that says there's going to be a $19.8 billion deficit. So I think Trudeau, along the way, and the SNC-Lavalin case is the tipping point, but throughout his 4 years, he's done so much with broken promises and bungled programs to make everyone angry in every demographic that they were trying to campaign to, and successfully campaigned to in 2015. Every demographic that they tried he's got the minus touch. That's as simple as that. Trudeau has the minus touch. So I think that this will turn spotlight back onto ethics, because you've got the interesting face-off. You've got Jody Wilson-Raybould, the first Aboriginal female Attorney General in Canada, who essentially lost her job because she did her job. Because she was acting as she should have as the Attorney General, who has got an interesting and independent role in the cabinet that's protected by law, special status as the chief legal officer of government, and the Prime Minister tried to exert his power on her, and eventually she lost the first round. But when this came to the Court of Public Opinion, she certainly won in the Court of Public Opinion. That here's someone who is the most famous politician in Canada of the moment, who is not a party leader, who is running for as an independent candidate in the election in Vancouver Granville, because of course she was kicked out of caucus, has a very good chance of getting reelected, because that's her supporters and just average people have looked at her and said, well, she did her job, and she did her job, she blew the whistle. And meanwhile, a lot of Liberals have turned on her and said a lot of nasty things to her. I think that you've got her on one side and you've got Trudeau on the other side. Trudeau came to power in 2015 with all kinds of slogans, all kinds of hope and change. It was going to be real change. That's what he was promising. There'd be openness and transparency. He was going to be a prime minister you could trust. He was going to change the way of government, change the way things were delivered to citizens. It was a whole new age after the Harper years, which were portrayed as very dark years and of scandal and other problems, and a prime minister who didn't seem to be terribly friendly with the public or with crowds, whereas Trudeau is a very outgoing fellow, a very friendly fellow, sleeves always rolled up. Well, since then, we've seen a different kind of Trudeau, who is basically just comparing himself with Harper in the past. He's comparing himself with Doug Ford, and to a lesser extent Jason Kenney. It's not about Trudeau being the better candidate anymore. It's about Trudeau being the less worst candidate. They're playing the game that often is played in an election, that they hope voters will go for the devil they know. Even though they know it's a devil, it's a less devilish option. They can hold their nose and vote. If that's the way that the Liberals are going to continue in this campaign, then it does offer an opportunity for Andrew Scheer and also Jagmeet Singh to step forward and show their virtuous side. But what they also need to do is one-up Trudeau. It's easy enough, like a lot of politicians do, that they're going to run a more open administration, they're going to adhere to the laws, they'll be better than the last guy. We hear that all the time, and often that just never comes true. It's just words that they use to get elected. well, will Andrew Scheer or Jagmeet Singh, and maybe even Elizabeth May, will they do something even more demonstrative? Will they actually show some sort of democratic reform kind of agenda? Will they actually show some sample laws, the kind of things they want to enact so that we don't have this happen again?
I haven't heard Andrew Scheer say that he would get rid of this deferred prosecution law. No,
I haven't heard about that. We haven't heard any new checks and balances. That's the problem. That they're just running to replace and get the power and get the higher pay, but are they in it for the public? That's always a question the public has to ask whenever an election comes, and there's a lot of people that kind of don't stick around to try to get that answer because they see that their promises have been broken and their trust has been broken in the past so often. So people don't vote, don't participate in the process, and that's also a risk too. So definitely Trudeau has given a lot of people a lot of reasons to not vote for him and to try to vote for someone else this fall. Will Jagmeet Singh, will Andrew Scheer, will Elizabeth May come forward with an agenda that causes people to vote for them and to put aside that cynicism? The cynicism about politicians is increasing. There's less trust for politicians. There's more cynicism about them because of things like this. What Trudeau did in this whole scandal, that he could have apologized to try to get forward from it and leave it behind, but he didn't. He has actually harmed his whole agenda, his whole real change agenda, as he tries to stay in power. What we'll have to see going forward, though, is how more this affects the Liberal Party. We've already seen some signs that this has affected the Liberal Party, that people have left the party or have kept their checkbooks in their pockets. People that may not vote for the Liberals in the fall, people that may not volunteer for the Liberals in the fall. We're already seeing some signs of that. CTV had a story, they analyzed it this week, about how many candidates are still left to be nominated. And with about 70 days left until the election, they found that the Liberals still had about 97 slots to fill. They had candidates in 97 ridings to fill. That's a lot for a governing party. You'd think that a party in government, the incumbent government, which has a good chance to get reelected, because incumbents always have a good chance of getting reelected, you'd think that more people would want to be part of the team. But that's not the case. And we saw with Trudeau's travel between May 21st and August 4th or so, he came back and forth to BC, 6 times to BC, and kept on having the obligatory government photo op to re-announce something that was in the budget, that he could have just issued a news release, but wanted the photo op and the media attention. He had cash for access fundraisers, and he had campaign-style rallies and main streeting. He was already campaigning, but was he already campaigning because, he was campaigning on the taxpayer dime, so it didn't cost the Liberal Party, but was he already also campaigning because he felt, and the people around him felt, that Liberal support was slipping? That this was something necessary for him to do in his mind, to come to BC so often, to stem the flow of people out of the Liberal Party, to try to bring people back into the tent. Is that one of the motivations? I think it really was. And so here you have, with getting on to be 10 weeks before the election, and the scandal of the year, the scandal of the last 4 years gets reignited, and it'll give a chance for the Greens, the NDP, and the Conservatives to bring to the table issues of trust and confidence and transparency and justice. Very important issues. The Liberals will do whatever they can to talk about climate change and getting rid of plastic straws, but I think people want to know where their money is going and who's using their money, and if people that have their money are using it properly. And this scandal is definitely one where that discussion can take place.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
Grand Portage Resources' Herbert Gold Project in southeast Alaska highlights increased gold resource, indicated and inferred, of 860,000 ounces, in excess of 10 grams per ton gold. Expansion drilling is planned on the Herbert Gold property for the summer of 2019. Grand Portage Resources trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, there's some kind of a land issue in North Vancouver involving the Trudeau family. What's the story there?
Yeah, well, way back when, 1974, it was also an election year, and Pierre Trudeau, a different Trudeau, the older Trudeau, was in power. He was running for re-election, wanted the Liberals to get a majority back then, and he had an environment minister. First time there was an environment minister. That was Jack Davis for one of the North Vancouver ridings, and in West Vancouver, just a sliver of West Vancouver, just to the east of Lionsgate Bridge, the Pierre Trudeau Liberals had this plan to build a Pacific Environment Center, and they're also going to have a Coast Guard base right there, across from Stanley Park on the North Shore side, just to the east of Lionsgate Bridge. If you drive Lionsgate Bridge, you look over to the side of the bridge, it's this just empty land, just this swampy beach with trees, and nothing's ever been built on it. But 1974, Trudeau promised in April of that year that they're going to build this facility, and what they did, first step was to get the land, and the land is actually Squamish Nation Indian Reserve land, about 55 acres, and so the federal government said, okay, well, we're going to build this year. We got the land. The land is under a 71-year lease, so from 1974 to 2045. And, they pay the Squamish Nation. At the time, it was through the Ministry of Indian Affairs. Now it's directly to the Squamish Nation from the Environment Ministry. And, well, nothing's ever been built there. Back in the 1990s, they did find that there was contamination on the area, and so there's been some work on remediation there to take away the contaminated soils and others, but there's been nothing built there. But what has been built is a very large amount of payments every year from the Environment Ministry to the Squamish Nation. Last year was about $13.16 million, according to the contract. The Squamish Nation wants almost $31 million. Because of the large inflation of the real estate industry over the last decade and property values, other properties got affected too. And the Squamish Nation went and got its own independent assessment. The federal government got its own independent assessment, and there's a big difference in them. The most recent assessment the Squamish Nation got said that the 55 acres are worth more than $661 million, so pay us $30.9 million a year. Federal government says, nope. No, we're only going to pay you, for now, 13-point-something million dollars. The two sides are even disagreeing on an arbitrator. The Squamish Nation wants Lance Finch, the former Chief Justice of the BC Court of Appeal, to decide the problem and find a solution for the impasse. And the federal government says, no, they don't want Lance Finch, but both sides should put together a list of their three desired mediators or arbitrators to put forward and try to find a common name. Well, the Squamish Nation doesn't want to wait any longer. On August 7th, they filed in BC Supreme Court to get the court to help solve this problem. $30.9 million is a big chunk of money and a big difference between what the federal government is already paying. The $17 million difference, that's a big difference there. And meanwhile, there's the question of why the government is still paying for land that's not being used. Why isn't the government finding a way to negotiate itself out of this, even if it might be a large payout to the Squamish Nation, just to get it off the books? If you've got no plans of using that land, why are we burdened by this long-term rental agreement? It really is a boondoggle. This whole Pacific Environment Center plan was shelved in the 1970s, not long after that election, because Jack Davis, the Environment Minister, lost his seat. Ron Huntington of the Progressive Conservatives won that election in the Capilano riding, and the Liberals decided not to follow through and build a mega project inside that riding. So there's still other questions too, because for periods of time the Conservatives have been in power, and the Conservatives have had members on the North Shore. There were a few times when they were Reform members and they weren't part of the government, but the Conservatives have been in power and could have and should have done something during their time in power, but decided not to. They had other priorities. Still, the last 4 years, it's been the Trudeau Liberals, and they seem to have been happy to continue to pay this, but the bureaucrats do not seem to have been happy to agree to pay large increases. I think this is one item that should become an election issue, because you got some unused land there which could go to a proper purpose. There's a lot of homeless people in the Lower Mainland. I'm sure they could give them a place to stay, a place to live, temporary modular housing, if that land can be proven to be clean enough and the contamination's out. Why not use that land for that kind of purpose? Or sell the land to a private company. If they want to build condos there, so be it, or something else, or playing fields. But that land is just there as a beach that no one can use.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after the break.
I'm Douglas Mason, CEO of Naturally Splendid, symbol NSP on the TSX Venture Exchange. Naturally Splendid is a biotechnology and consumer products company focused on the global cannabis and health markets. Naturally Splendid is expanding distribution in this rapidly growing market with products currently in Canada, the USA, South Korea, Germany, and Australia. To view our comprehensive company presentation and for more information, please visit our website at naturallysplendid.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob Mackin, former police chief of West Vancouver, senior police official in Vancouver, Cash Heed, sounding off about RCMP secrecy. What's he so concerned about?
Well, on the Breaker.News podcast this week, I've got an interview with Cash Heed, who is a former politician and former police chief. He's someone who has been an advocate of more transparency when it comes to policing. Of course, we can't ask everything from police officers. They like journalists, have to sometimes keep their notes close to their vest for obvious reasons. They're investigators and don't want to tip off those who might want to use the information in improper means. And of course, they want to solve a crime, and they also want to solve a crime with the public's help. The police sometimes run out of leads, run out of ideas, run out of information, and have to appeal to the public. And Cash Heed said that there's a problem right now that police agencies and other organizations, regulatory organizations, seem to think there's a one-way street. That there should actually be a two-way street. That they should be doing whatever they can on a daily basis to be encouraging public trust in what they do and public confidence in what they do. And the way to do that, the best way to do that, is by being transparent. And we've seen several cases this summer where there have been questions, severe questions about the information and the lack of information that has come from the police, both municipal and RCMP, from the coroner's office, from the independent investigations office, from other agencies in and around the law enforcement equation, about several different incidents. Of course, we had the two teenagers from Port Alberni on an alleged crime spree, suspected of murdering 3 people before, running out of road and running out of their own time, and apparently decided to kill themselves in Gillam, Manitoba. in the early days of that, there were severe questions that were not being answered by the RCMP, and you got to wonder if those unanswered questions made it more difficult for the RCMP to try to solve this crime. There was a crash on Addenbrooke Island in late July of a float plane, and 4 tourists from other countries died in that. The coroner service, as per their policy, their new policy, they won't give the names. And when names of victims of a transportation accident like that, or names of victims of a crime aren't released, it doesn't allow the media to report on a story, to try to put faces to the names and tell the story of the people who met an untimely end. And if we in the media can't tell that story of a person who is an innocent victim, then how are we going to put the politicians on the hot seat so that the politicians can make change to make life safer and to bring more justice to our communities? If a story is going to be in and out in one day, and there won't be the personal angle put on it, then the media are going to move on to something else because there's always new stories happening, and the public's attention is going to go away. And when that happens, that means that there's less of a chance to get the increase in safety, to get the increase in justice that our communities need and often desire. So, Cash Heed is certainly someone who is an advocate of that, and certainly our police agencies and other regulatory agencies, shouldn't be subject to political interference. But certainly it would be within everyone's best interest if the Attorney General, if the Solicitor General, both federal and provincial, were to give direction to agencies to be more forthcoming, to study what happens just south of the border, and maybe share notes, learn from the example down south, because whenever there's a tragedy, whether it's a mass shooting or a natural disaster in the United States, one of the things you can always see when you watch the live coverage, live media coverage, whether it's a local network affiliate or if it's one of the national news channels, is the care and the attention that the U.S. authorities tend to give to communicating to the public, to explain to the public what has happened, what is happening, and how the public should react, and what those agencies need when it comes to help from the public. There seems to be a better two-way street in the United States than there is in Canada when it comes to those types of incidents of crime and of natural disasters that affect neighborhoods and cities.
Bob, in your decades of covering the courts and legal situations, have you ever seen a court case thrown out because the police gave too much information to the media?
No, never have. And that's the problem. They're always erring on the side of caution and erring on the side of privacy, even when you know that privacy will not really stand up as an excuse if it was adjudicated. And this is part of the problem, that it just seems to be an easy answer. And is that answer, the privacy answer, is that used as code for we don't know? If they don't know, why don't they say we don't know? We're trying to find out. We don't know. It's not weakness to tell the truth. In a case like this, they should say that if they don't have the clue, if they don't know what's going on, tell the public. The public will be forgiving if they do tell the public we don't know. Well, maybe the public will respond and say, guess what? If you don't know, I know something that can help you. You never know who out there in the public might hear that and do their duty as a citizen and let the authorities know what they know. But definitely the erring on the side of privacy is not good for our communities. And if you look at what's happened recently in law enforcement as well, we don't have the radio frequencies anymore. We can't listen to the dispatch radios to find out where the fires are happening in real time, where the police are going in real time, where the paramedics are going in real time. We don't know anymore of what's unfolding. They've encrypted the radio frequencies in the major cities. Some of the suburbs and smaller communities in BC, those radios are still available to be listened to, but probably not for much longer as the technology gets cheaper and permeates. So we really are at a disadvantage. I mean, there are some great people in our communities who are risking their lives on a daily basis to keep us secure and keep us safe, and we just can't report it anymore because we don't know. The community police agencies, for instance, tend only to issue news releases on a reactionary basis, that if something has happened and they can't avoid telling us, well, they tell us. Or if something has happened and they need our help, they tell us. But they don't release the crime blotter like they used to. And sometimes when you do contact the media relations office at a police agency, they don't know themselves. They haven't heard of it, and they have to rely on their superiors to tell them if an incident happened, and often they don't know what happened. Or at least they're not telling the truth about that. There's this communications breakdown that has happened as the media has gotten smaller and as the police have gotten smarter and more secretive. And it's not good, because if we don't know the good work that they're doing, sometimes if they're doing bad work, if we don't know that, well, we can't improve it. And if we can't improve it, or if we can't applaud their work, then there's a disconnect. And we need good policing, we need good fire, we need good paramedics. And if the media can't report on the good things they're doing and also keep a check on them for the bad things they're doing, we might see more situations of wrongdoing. That's just the way it goes. If you have less sunlight, then that's going to be the result. I mean, one example that's playing itself out in the United States, thankfully the New York Times broke the story, but the situation with the suicide of Jeffrey Epstein, the jailed pedophile in New York, who tried previously to kill himself, who was on suicide watch, but then inexplicably taken off. Turns out that the jail guards were sleeping on the job, and they falsified records to indicate that they weren't sleeping on the job. New York Times reported that they were sleeping on the job, so they missed out on their duties to regularly do rounds of the jails, and look what happened. The notorious billionaire financier who was charged with serious crimes was able to escape, although escape by taking his life. But there were a lot of people, the prosecutors and the victims, who wanted to see him have his day in court and to see him put under the light of justice, and that didn't happen. And there's a lot of people that are very concerned about that situation there, that if we don't know how the people that we trust to do these jobs, if they're doing the job or not, if we can't find out, then it makes it easier for them to not do their jobs. Those jail guards are under investigation, and they probably thought that they'd get away with it. They probably thought they could sleep on the job. Well, luckily, one media outlet got a tip and did that story. So, as much as those who are in various parts of law enforcement or government try to operate in the shadows, they can't do it all the time.
Bob, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin, publisher of TheBreaker.News, his website, thebreaker.ca. If you have any questions for Bob or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.